Well, hi, everybody. I'm Jason Cusick. I'm the lead pastor of Journey of Faith, and thanks for joining us for our online service. This might be the first time you're with us because you logged on from our Easter service. And if that's you, so happy that we can be together like this. I hope that the Easter service, as well as this service so far, has been encouraging to you. And if you haven't picked up on it already, a big part of what we do is we're trying to make spiritual things understandable and as relevant as possible so that you can grow in a relationship with God. So, whether this is your first time checking out God or religion or church, or whether or not you have a religious background, we're so happy you're with us. Right now, we're going to get into the message part of our service. Today, we're starting a series of messages called You First, Becoming the Change You Want to See. And the idea behind this series is it's real easy for us to be armchair quarterbacks when we look at the state of the world. We all have kind of a mental list of what we'd like to see changed and how we want to see other people start acting. Well, in this 4 week series, we're going to stop listening to our own grumbling and we're going to start listening to an invitation from Jesus to lead the way. We want to see change in the world. We get to hear Jesus say, You first. Let me start by telling you a story. Last year, my wife and I got a new car, and we agreed that she'd drive this one. And when I say we agreed, I mean she told me that she would drive this one because I'm not a good driver. Anyway, a couple of months go by, and she was doing all the driving, and I was the navigator. But I also quickly became the unsolicited gas monitor. Now, something to know about this car is we bought one of these hybrids that if you drive it under 20 miles per hour, it runs on electric and it saves gas. So we'd be driving and I'd say, hey, if you slow down about 5 miles per hour, we can run on electric. And as you can guess, that didn't last long because she finally said something like, you don't know what it's like to run errands for 15 minutes driving under 20 miles per hour. So I heard that and I was like, you know what? Game on. So I waited until she was all comfy at home one evening to run some errands, and I asked her, "Hey, can I drive your car?" You know what she said? Yes. So I got in the car, I turned it on, which sounded like silence. I don't even understand how we know cars are on nowadays. And I said to myself, I'm going to do a 15-minute errand run using no gas, only electric. I'm going to show her. When I arrived home an hour and 10 minutes later, she was like, "Where have you been?" And I was like, "I ran those errands and I used no gas at all, only electric." But I had to drive so slow. There were times where people were right on my tail because they were driving speed limit. And I was just like, I guess I have to pull over and let them pass. And I took all these like strange routes just to avoid people who were driving normal so I could drive under 20 miles per hour. By the way, I'm thinking about developing an app that can get you to your destination by only using shopping mall and CVS parking lots. So I've become really good at that. But here's what I learned. It was easy for me to sit in the passenger seat and tell her how to drive. But what taught me more and gave me more compassion was getting behind the wheel myself. I was thinking about that story when I was thinking about all the problems in our world, in our community, and in our workplace, our schools, our homes. There's plenty of opportunities to expect things from other people and to critique and to judge and to grumble, but none of those things work to make any difference. There's so many needs in the world, and the best thing we can do is get out of the navigator seat or the unsolicited advisor seat and get behind the wheel ourselves. Here's the main idea of our message for today. Instead of pointing out what other people should do, we should lead the way in meeting people's needs. What we're talking about in this series is that we can be a positive influence in the lives of people around us. Now, For some of you, this is a lot clearer because you have formal leadership roles. But some of you don't consider yourself leaders. But you know what? You are. We're all leaders. Leadership is about having influence in people's lives. And every one of us, through our words and our actions, can have a powerful impact on the people around us. And we need to realize that. So I really hope this series is going to be helpful for all of us because each week we're going to look at a different story from Jesus's life and we're going to see how it can help us be the change that we want to see in the world. So today we're going to read a story that's in the New Testament of the Bible, and you can find it here in Mark 6:30 to 44. Now, if you're new with us and you're not used to navigating a Bible, that's not a problem. I'm going to have everything you need to know right here on the screen. But I will say, learning more about where to find things in the Bible and reading it on your own is really something I want to invite you to learn to do more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this story, make a few observations along the way, and then I want to point out a couple of ways in which Jesus is asking us to lead the way in meeting people's needs. Now, this story is a very famous story where Jesus miraculously feeds a group of over 5,000 people with just a little bit of food. And it takes place near a beach as Jesus was arriving by boat, and there was this huge crowd of people that needed him. Here's what it says. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped out from the boat, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Now, I love how Jesus' first response to people in need was always compassion. He didn't look at them and like, dang, look at all these needy people, kind of rolling his eyes or something like that. He saw people as what he called sheep without a shepherd. Now, he's not saying these people are animals. He's using an agricultural metaphor, and he's saying these people need love, support, encouragement. Um, do you see people through the lens of compassion? Then it says this. Late in the afternoon, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to nearby farms and villages and buy something to eat." So the disciples know the people want to be with Jesus, but it's getting close to dinner time. Now, some of you are like this. If you're really connecting with people and it hits around 4 p.m., your brain starts going, okay, are we breaking up now? Are we doing dinner together? Like what's the plan, right? And in Jesus's culture, meal hospitality was huge. If you were with people and you didn't feed people, that was embarrassing and offensive. What were Jesus's disciples doing at this moment? They were assessing people's needs. Now, of course, maybe the disciples just wanted the people to go away. And we're like that too sometimes, right? We're thinking more about our own needs. But how good are you at assessing the needs of people in your life? So Jesus's disciples are like, hey, the people are getting hungry. They need to go somewhere to get some help. And then Jesus says this to them. You feed them. Now, this is a turning point for them and for us. Jesus is really calling for a gigantic shift of mindset. The disciples are like, hey, somebody should do something. And Jesus says, yeah, you do it. I'm sending you. Jesus is calling us to see people with eyes of compassion. And like the disciples, he wants us assessing the needs of people around us so he can do great things in their lives. Where we see problems, Jesus sees opportunities for us to lead the way in ways that are unique to us. I'll give you a quick example from my own life. When I started following Jesus back in college, I was with this group of older adults at our church who were talking about some of the lonely and hurting people in a nursing home around the corner. And they said, boy, Jason, these people in nursing homes, they just want somebody to talk to, someone to pray with them. someone with joy on their face. And I remember saying, wow, that's sad. Somebody should go visit them. And they were like, we do twice a month, and you should come with. And I was like, well, I wouldn't really know what to do. I'm not a pastor, I'm not a caregiver or a counselor. And they asked, do you know how to smile? Do you know how to read a Bible verse out loud? Do you know how to listen to somebody while they tell a story? And I was like, yeah. And they said, you visit them, and then we'll let God do the rest. My first response was to be focused on what I didn't have or what I didn't know, just like the disciples. When Jesus said, you feed them, they were like, with what? They asked. We'd have to work for months to earn enough money to buy food for all these people. They were like, Jesus, DoorDash will not even exist for another 2,000 years. We can't feed all these people. They were focusing on what they didn't have, that is enough food, rather than who was empowering them, Jesus, who could provide everything. So Jesus asks them, he says, how much bread do you have? He asks. Go and find out. I find it funny. Every time I read the New Testament, Jesus is always telling people to go do things. Go, 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 go do this. So they bring back some bread and some fish, and then Jesus miraculously multiplies it to feed everyone. Now, you got to read this story for yourself. Read it this week because there's some great stuff in it, including afterwards, there were leftovers, which is just a reminder that when God provides, sometimes we end up with more than we expected or more than we deserve. You ever had that happen to you? I had a little, another quick thing that I was thinking while I was reading this. Isn't it interesting that Jesus didn't just miraculously fill these people's bellies directly? Or he didn't supernaturally just remove their appetite? He could have done that. He also didn't just create little food portions that just popped up on people's laps. Why is that? Maybe when it comes to compassionately meeting people's needs, Jesus wants to work through us, not around us. Like Jesus' disciples, we look around and we go, man, somebody's got to do something. We might even say, I don't have the money. I don't have the time. I don't have the skills, the right words. I don't have the empathy. But Jesus' response is, what do you have? I can use that. I can multiply that. I can change lives through what you have. Jesus says, you feed them. Jesus is inviting us to lead the way in meeting people's needs. How? Here's a couple of ways. First, discover what motivates the people in your life and community. Just like Jesus and the disciples scanned the crowd and they figured out people's spiritual and physical needs, the 5,000 plus people that were right there with them, I think that's what Jesus is calling us to. What motivates the people right around us at work, school, family, neighbors? Now, I mentioned that we're all leaders because we all have influence, but if you're a business owner or you're in a management position, what I'm going to share right now might be specifically helpful for you to become better leaders. Research on workplace settings tells us the top 5 motivators that people have on their jobs are these. They want to enjoy their coworkers. They want challenging work. They want to embrace the company's values. They want recognition and appreciation and money. And what's interesting is money is always at the bottom of these lists because really people are willing to make less if they feel like they have a clear mission and they're valued and they're challenged. But what about some of these other motivators here? Are you aware of how powerful these are with the people around you? Maybe you're motivated really strongly by one of these, but need to grow in your awareness of another one. I'll give you an example of this. I spoke with a leader last week who is very motivated by challenging work and accomplishing goals. Very detailed, very action oriented, finds a lot of personal fulfillment in that. Like goal completion is the reward. So when a team goal is met, the leader is ready to move on. But the leader's team members are more motivated by recognition and appreciation. So this leader is learning to do more affirming and praising and celebrating the accomplishments of the other people on the team because that's what motivates them. Now, what about in non work settings? What motivates people? As a church, we actually commissioned a huge research survey of people living right here in the South Bay to find out the main motivators of all of us living around here. Here's some of the top motivators we found: health and wellness, safety, sense of community, learning, financial stability. This is what the South Bay is about. Can you relate to these? These are some of the things we actually think about when we're planning messages and when we're planning ministry at the church because we want to help connect with people's needs and motivations and help them connect those things with Jesus. The point is, Jesus wants us to see others through a lens of compassion and assess what motivates people because God wants to work in and through us to help meet needs. Here's a you feed them action step for you this week. Identify the motivations of the top 2 or 3 people on your team or in your sphere of influence. What's the key motivations of your employees, of your children, your parents, your neighbors? I did this with some of the people I work with. The team that I work closest with is a very diverse team in the sense that a lot of people on the team have very different motivators. And so understanding their motivations is helping me be a more supportive person and a better influencer and leader in their life. But you know what a major motivator of all people in all spheres of influence is? Spiritual motivation. Now, I'm not talking about people being motivated to be more religious or attend church or have a deeper, closer relationship with God, although that does motivate some people. I'm talking about a motivation that comes from deep within us all. It's a longing for things like purpose and empowerment and justice and grace. And I believe at our core, these are spiritual motivations. An ancient wisdom writer in the Bible put it this way: God has planted eternity in the human heart. Here's what that means. As human beings, we all have kind of a fingerprint of God on our souls that reminds us we're not just physical, we're spiritual too. And we have these spiritual longings for eternity. We want to have experiences that are bigger and deeper than we understand. It's like there's part of our hearts that's only fulfilled through a relationship with God. So, as a church and as individuals, we want to help people discover that this spiritual longing in them, which is often unverbalized, sometimes even unconscious, is really Jesus drawing them into a relationship with Him. Now, for some of you, what I just said about that deep spiritual motivation within you is really resonating with you. You're like, that's it. That's what I'm dealing with. We want to help you with that. Would you reach out to us? We want to get you connected with people and we want to help you take your next step with God. Okay, back to our story. Jesus says, you feed them, right? We should lead the way in meeting people's needs. How? First, discover what motivates the people in your life and in your community. And then here's one more: get involved personally in meeting people's needs. So I just listed some of the common motivators people have in the workplace, in home and community, things like safety and community and feeling challenged and valued and appreciated, health and wellness, whatever it is in your immediate sphere of influence. Here's some practical ways that we can help people in our life and community. So here's a big one: clarify expectations and commit to meeting those expectations. So, research tells us that one of the major causes for workplace dissatisfaction is confusion about expectations. They're either unclear or they're unmet. This is also true with relationship conflicts, including parent child relationships. We expect things from each other, but we usually don't say what it is. A lot of times we expect the other person to know what we are thinking or feeling or expecting, or we think we actually made it clear. We might even say, if whoever it is really knew me, they would know what I was expecting. Here's a kind of a silly but a simple example. I got a dog recently. His name is Jake. Here's a picture of Jake. Um, the main thing Jake does all day is just lay around and nap. So he'll come over to me, he'll sit down with his face toward me, and then I'll just pet his head while he's resting or sleeping while I'm working or studying, and it's so good. But for the first few weeks of having Jake, he would sit next to me with his face near me, and I would pet him, and then he would get up and turn around and face away from me. And I was like, dang, I guess he got his needs met. He just turned away. So I was like, I guess I'll just go back to my business. After a while, my daughter saw this. She saw what was happening and she said, "You know what Jake's doing, right? He likes you and he trusts you. So he's turning around so you can scratch his bottom." Now, the first thing I thought was, well, if that's what he expected, why didn't he say anything? But of course, he's a dog. He's not going to tell me what he's expecting. I have just to figure it out. Um, Now, how do I appropriately transition out of a bottom scratching story into what we should do with each other? Well, forget it. Let me just say this. Let's clarify our expectations of each other. All right. We're not mind readers. Employers, let's work at creating and recreating clearer job descriptions. And I just read how important this is, not just with new employees, but next generation employees. Let's learn what our employees expect from us. I'm really trying to do this, and we're really trying to do that just with our team here at church. If you work for someone, lead up. Learn to draw out your supervisor's expectations. What are they looking for from you? And then try to meet those expectations. Parents, communicate reasonable expectations to your kids and find out what your kids expect from you. Kids, draw out your parents' expectations that they have of you. Now, we can't always meet everyone's expectations, but clarifying this stuff can clear up confusion and can create more possibility for people to get their needs met. Here's another way to practically meet people's needs: celebrate publicly, correct privately. So, our culture has this flip flopped and it's completely bungled things. People are keyboard warriors on social media. Then when we get to face, they go, well, I didn't really mean it that way. Or we just avoid subjects altogether. So the goal is we should be praising people publicly at work, home, personal relationships. This creates good relationships. We need to lead from kindness and affirmation. And I think we all need to work on this. And then when it comes to holding each other accountable and challenging each other to be our best selves and even correcting things, this should be done in more private settings. Parents, don't shame your kids in front of everyone. Pull them aside and talk to them. Couples, please stop arguing in front of us. Supervisors, have one on one meetings that re clarify unmet expectations. And make sure, and listen to me on this one, make sure that you're the same person in private as you are in public. Some of you are so kind in public, but you're really nasty privately. And actually, if we're correcting people, like holding people accountable and challenging each other and correcting behavior, our gentleness should probably increase in those times. Now, personally, I need to work on the opposite of that because I've been told that I'm so nice and gentle with people that sometimes they don't hear the corrections that I actually want them to make. And some of you are like that too. We need to be clearer. But you know what's really cool too? Don't just praise people publicly, praise them privately. What if we talked about people behind their backs in good ways? Wouldn't it be cool at work and in family and reputation, in friendships, if you had a reputation for saying good things about people behind their backs? Here's one more way to get involved in personally meeting needs: collaborate with people. There's so many great ways to meet needs that are already happening in the area. We don't have to do this alone. We don't have to make stuff up. In fact, this week, would you head over to our serve page on our website? And we have all these different ways to serve in our community: work days and feeding the hungry, foster care, adoption, homeless initiatives. We collaborate with local organizations and churches so we can work together. Here's another you feed them action step for you: make a move to be more helpful and productive this week. What would that look like for you? Maybe some of those simple, practical ways to improve things at work or at home or in your relationships. What can you do this week to help meet people's needs? Now, let me jump back to Jesus's miracle story to just refer to one more thing. Jesus sees all the people's needs, and he doesn't say, stand back, watch me do this. He says, you feed them. So the disciples find what they have, and they bring it to Jesus. And then it says this: then Jesus told the disciples to have the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of 50 or 100. Why does he do this? Well, it doesn't say, but I think this is some kind of organization for food distribution. I mean, when you think about it, there was 5,000 plus people. If they had a drone shot, it would probably look something like this, right? And so Jesus is like, look, I can help you feed them, but this is bananas. We need to organize this a little bit here. So he breaks them up kind of into sections, right, of 50s and 100s. Sometimes meeting people's needs really requires some strategic teamwork. So let me make a shameless you feed them ask of you. We're going to start regathering for our church services here in Manhattan Beach next week, and then 2 months at our Torrance campus. And this is a huge strategic effort. We need hundreds of people to fulfill our mission. We're all part of it here in the South Bay. We want people to come to know Jesus, to connect in relationships, and to spread compassion here and around the world. And this starts by rebuilding our volunteer teams for our Sunday experiences. So I need you first. So here's a link to our website. Would you go there today or this week and look for an opportunity to sign up to be involved in our regathering? Okay, what did we talk about today? It's way too easy to be an armchair quarterback when it comes to what's happening in the world. We all have a list of things that we'd like to see change, how we want other people acting. But Jesus is inviting us to lead the way in meeting people's needs. And how can we do that? 2 ways: discover what motivates the people in your life and community, and get involved personally in meeting people's needs. Our temptation is to send people away or ask Jesus to fix it. But Jesus says, you feed them. Let's look for ways this week that we can do that. Let me pray for us. God, thank you so much for how you take care of us. You see us with eyes of compassion. You know what motivates us, and you know what our needs are, and you're there to help us. And then what you do is you turn that around and you invite us to go out and be part of meeting other people's needs. You want to work in and through us, not around and despite us. So give us that heart of compassion that you have. Give us discernment and help us to do what we can with your power and your gifting to be able to meet people's needs right where we're at. We're looking at the world and we're going, where do we start? And Jesus, you're saying to us, you first. Help us to become the change we want to see in the world. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for joining us this week for our service. Hope you got a lot out of it. If we can help you take your next step in having a relationship with Jesus, please let us know, and we'll see you next week.